There we go.
Hello. Hello again, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We are here to commemorate all those who lost their lives in the Holocaust and all those who survived. I'm just so privileged that everybody could be here today and enjoy the food and enjoy the company. So why don't we go ahead and get started. Okay, so I should introduce myself. I'm Brandon Schwartz. I'm a second year here, originally from Los Angeles, and I am the co-president with Anna Polster right here of J-Shoft, the Jewish group at Wright State Medical School. So for this evening, I'm going to give a brief introduction, meaning of Yom HaShoah. We're going to do a little candlelight, which is different this year than we have done in the past, to remember all those who lost their lives. And then we're going to have a discussion by Anna Polster about her grandfather. And then we will have our main event with a speech by Samuel Heider. Alrighty? Okay, so if there are any people who are in the military, active duty, or veterans of the military, could you please stand and be recognized? Yeah. Thank you for your service. And if you or a loved one was a victim of the Holocaust, can you please stand as well and be? You don't have to stand up. That's okay. Thank you. So I want to give a little introduction and what the meaning of Yom HaShoah is and how it was all started. It's the day, it translates to the Day of Remembrance of the Holocaust. It's supposed to be on the 27th day of Nisan in the Jewish calendar. And it was enacted by the Knesset, which is the Israeli government, in 1959 as a law, but practices started before that in the 50s as well. In the beginning, it was focused more on resistance, passive resistance, active resistance against the Nazis. And then in the 60s, the Israeli government enacted sirens to stop traffic all over Israel during 11 a.m. as well as sundown for a couple of minutes just to remember all those who lost their lives. In Israel, there's no public entertainment. All the movie theaters are closed on that day so that you can remember, and all public TV and broadcasting in Israel as well as commemorates the Jewish people. In North America, there are vast practices. People do things very differently. It's observed oftentimes in synagogues and communities, and they all commemorate with vigils and different programs. I know at Dayton, every year there is a speaker who comes and talks about their experiences, and so we're trying to recreate that here at Boonshoft. The ceremonies are oftentimes on Sundays, and they are led by a survivor. And a lot of times they read the names of victims of the 6 million Jews. So at this moment, if we could all just take a brief moment of silence to remember all those who lost their lives during the Holocaust. Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we're going to go ahead and light candles to remember. There are 6 candles here to commemorate the 6 million Jews who lost their lives. And we would like Samuel Heider to come up and lead the service with a prayer. So do you want me to volunteer? Please rise.
I'm going to make the prayers for the 6 million Jews and also for the most important 6 concentration camps. I'm going to mention 6 concentration camps, and I was in 5 of them. So please bear with me. By the Nazis, Yom HaShoah in Auschwitz. Majdanek, Treblinka, Buchenwald, Dachau, Bergen-Belsen, Warsaw Ghetto, Lodz Ghetto, Wilno Ghetto, Sobibor, Babi Yar, וכל אירופה שנהרגו ב6 מיליון הקדושים והטהורים וידו וגן עדן תהיה מנחוסם לכן ברחמים יסתירוי בססר כנופוי לעולמם וישרור בצרור החיים אס נשמוסוי אדוני ונחלוסוי וסנוחו בשוליים המשכו יסיים ונאמר אמן.
All right, at this time, Hannah, I'd like to bring Hannah down to say a few words about her grandfather's story.
This or the speech.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Thank you very much for coming. So this was my grandfather. Zanzibar, and when he came to the States, he became Robert Bob Short Khan. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about his story. So this is the story of my grandfather, Baruch Khan Sipor, a Holocaust survivor who lived from 1919 to 2000. Baruch in Hebrew means blessing, and it appropriately describes his life despite the hardships he endured. After arriving in the United States in 1946, he changed his name, which was a common practice for immigrants, to Bob Khan, and settled in Cleveland, Ohio, where he had relatives. After the war, he had one remaining sibling, his sister Gittel, who settled in Israel prior to World War II. The rest of their immediate family perished at the hands of Hitler and his Nazis. Upon visiting Gittel in Israel, my Papa Bob met my grandmother, Rachel Tepper. They got married and moved back to Beechwood, a Cleveland suburb, where they raised my mom, Lori, and her two sisters. My papa leaves 7 grandchildren. The following account comes from my mother and one of my grandfather's cousins, Leonard Hansifer, whose family helped my papa get settled in the United States. Baruch Khan Sipor was born in Kobrin, Poland, now modern-day Belarus. He was 19 when World War II started in 1939, and soon thereafter, he, along with his mother and 4 siblings, were placed in the stronger of the 2 ghettos in their small town. He was assigned to work in the stables, cleaning up after horses, where he was struck down one day by a Nazi guard. Furious with this treatment, he refused to work any longer, tore off his Jude star, and would sneak out of the ghetto at night, risking his life to gather food for his family. After some time, the B ghetto, the weaker of the 2, was annihilated, and everyone in the A ghetto was forced to work harder. The Jews of the A ghetto believed that if they cooperated, their lives would be spared by the Germans. However, despite their hopes, they were taken on a death march, where they were forced to run for miles, dig their own death ditches, and then were shot and thrown in the ditches to die. Among those murdered on the march was my great-grandmother, Cyril Khan Sipor. I was named Hannah Cyril Polster in her memory. Prior to this death march, my Papa Bob had escaped from the ghetto entirely and was a partisan warrior, teaming up with other rebel fighters from Russia and surrounding areas. Some were Jewish, but most were Christian. Despite their religious differences, they shared the same goal of stopping the Nazis. One of Papa's brothers, a young father forced to separate from his daughter, was able to escape from the death march and join their group. One night, my Papa, his brother, and 4 other partisans decided to head back into their town to look for food and weapons. Unfortunately, upon their return to the forest, they were spotted. Tragically, my grandfather's brother was shot down next to him. But my Papa knew that surrendering to Hitler was never an option. And despite having just witnessed the murder of his brother, my Papa's remarkable strength and determination enabled him to keep running. He ran until he saw a farmer on a horse in the distance. While still being pursued, my grandfather threatened the farmer with a hand grenade, took his horse, and escaped deep into the forest. My Papa said the worst times were during the winter, where the snow reflected his and the partisans' movements. The days were their enemy, so they remained hidden. The dark nights put them at ease, enabling them to move west through German lines. The underground conducted military operations and sabotage against the Germans. When asked why the Nazis did not carry out operations to destroy the underground itself, my Papa said, "The Germans were afraid of us." My Papa told the story of the underground meeting a doctor, that there were women and children with them, wounded fighters, and people who were ill. He said that a small group of them went to a nearby town, entered a hospital, kidnapped a doctor, and brought him to their encampment. He did not tell the fate of that doctor. He spoke with their knowledge of a German convoy that was scheduled to pass along a certain road. With the military expertise of the Soviet soldiers, he explained how they were deployed in a staggered arrangement on either side of the road and destroyed the convoy. He spoke with their knowledge of a German. The Soviets continued to advance westward, and during this time, the soldiers told my papa not to stay in the army, pointing out that there were soldiers who had been wounded several times. Some had even lost limbs, and they were still pressed into duty. By then, my papa had been a Soviet soldier for nearly 6 months. The time came when the Soviet and American armies met. It was then in Germany that my papa deserted the Soviets and joined a group of displaced persons. Shortly thereafter, the American army set up camps for these people and began interrogating them. When asked where he came from, my papa answered, "I was in the Mauthausen concentration camp." This was a brilliant lie, for inmates of this camp were spared of the tattoos that inmates of the other concentration camps were required to receive for counting and tracking purposes. Since my papa had never been in a camp, he thought the American army would believe his lie about why he lacked a tattoo. The next day, he was interrogated again. But this time, he was unaware that a former Mauthausen inmate was present during the interrogation. After a while, one of the officers told him that they knew he was lying and that he should tell the truth. Intimidated by this, my papa told the American soldiers everything from beginning to end. When he was finished, there was a long silence. Finally, one of the ranking officers spoke and said, "You are the kind of man we want to have with us." With great relief, my papa accepted their offer and remained working for the U.S. Army from the war's end in May 1945 until the summer of 1946. During that year, he did intelligence work, translations, helped those who were afraid to talk, and was a witness at the Nuremberg trials. It was not until the Army felt my grandfather's work was over that a Captain Jacobs of the U.S. Army sent a V-mail letter to my papa's cousin, Shia Kansifer, who lived in Savannah, Georgia at the time. Shia's son, Leonard, gave me much of the information provided in this account. Following this letter from the captain, Leonard's family stayed in touch with my grandfather and helped him get to the States. Leonard explained that my papa wrote asking if they could send him not money, but rather small items such as pens and pencils, small notepads, paper clamps, small toys, safety pins, and the like, for these things were important for bartering. Leonard remembers filling cigar boxes with these trinkets and mailing them to Germany. After several weeks of exchanges, my papa arrived in Savannah by train from New York. He grew even closer with Leonard's family and stayed and worked with them for 6 months before deciding to move to Cleveland, where some of his mother's cousins lived. Cleveland became his new home, and he lived a happy, humble life with my grandmother and their daughters. He had big brown eyes, tan skin, a muscular physique, and a full head of hair. He loved red meat and rye bread, and he was always put on babysitting duty, since he was the only one who could catch anyone from 8 grandchildren. I remember him clapping his hands and chasing me upstairs when I needed to get ready for bed. He passed away when I was in 1st grade in June 2000 at 81 years old. Robert Bob Khan, formerly Baruch Khan Sipor, was a hero because he said no to Hitler and the German Nazis who discriminated, segregated, and murdered millions of people based on race. He refused to be a bystander. I'm privileged to call him my grandfather, and I'm honored to share his story. I hope his lesson of fighting for what's right inspires all those who hear his story to recognize our duty in preventing any group of people from experiencing a Holocaust, a Shoah of their own. Thank you. And just to show you, I have a few pictures. So some of these I've never seen him so young. And this is one where he went back actually to his hometown. And this was the memorial for those who were killed in his town. This is another young picture. He just came to the States. This is his letter inviting him to the Nuremberg trials. And this is him, my grandmother, my mom in the middle, her two sisters at my mom's wedding. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, so now I would like to play a brief clip about our speaker before we introduce him for this evening. So Mr. Heider had never been able to have a bar mitzvah because of what was happening in Europe. So he was able to have one recently at this past month at a temple, and it was on the news, so I'd like to play that clip now. It's like the unmute button, that makes sense.
Us who lost nearly everything, now receiving a gift he never saw coming. Here's ABC's Ariel Russia.
It's a rite of passage for Jewish teens. But Samuel Heider is 93. His dream of a bar mitzvah as a young boy dashed by the darkness of the Holocaust. His family torn apart as the Nazis invaded Poland. They were separated and sent to concentration camps.
My parents didn't live to be on my bar mitzvah.
His parents and siblings perished, but Sam still clinging to their memory and to this picture of his sister. He managed to save it while fighting to survive Auschwitz.
God was with me and I managed to keep the picture till this day.
After the war, Sam immigrated to Dayton, Ohio, building a new life and family. Decades later, utterly with this surprise.
I told them, we're not having just a birthday party today, it's going to be your bar mitzvah.
Happy bar mitzvah. Days before his 94th birthday, Sam, surrounded by his community, finally celebrating his bar mitzvah.
Today was my real bar mitzvah. God gave me strength.
A milestone.
This day is for me a happy day and a very emotional day too.
A blessing. A toast to life. Ariel Reshef, ABC News.
Our thanks to Ariel for that story, and our thanks
All right, now I would like to welcome our introduction for Mr. Heider. Today we are blessed to have David Schuster, physical medicine and rehabilitation doctor from the Dayton area, as well as the head of the Holocaust and Medicine elective for 4th year. So if any of you would like to join that in 4th year, you are welcome to, and we are welcome to have him today. So come on down.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Hannah, and everybody else who made this happen today. I'd like to say a special thanks to a few faculty members that are here. Dr. Mary White, who gave me early inspiration. Thanks for being here, Mary. And Dr. Robert Fife, who introduced the first Medicine and the Holocaust Community Seminar that's ever happened at this university. Thanks, everybody. Please give a hand to everybody that's made all this happen. Thanks to all those who provided food. You were the most important. Absolutely. Just very little. On Thursdays, most Thursdays, at the Golden Nugget restaurant, a miracle takes place. My friend Shmulik here takes me to lunch at the Golden Nugget, where he's treated like a king. He has brought spontaneously a sample of potato soup. And on some days they say, sorry Sam, it's not so good today. He's brought a sample of the potato soup to taste it and make sure it's okay. And if it's okay, he has a big bowl of potato soup. What? This is my turn. Why is potato soup a miracle? Listen, mein Kinder, and you will hear Sam's story. You'll understand why potato soup is a miracle. Sam is a role model. Sam is all my ancestors, all my family, those who I met and those who I never met, rolled into one. He has used his life to educate all of us, to educate the world to do. He's spoken uncountable times, over and over and over again. And every time I hear him, I hear something new, and it gets better. How fortunate we are. Everybody in this room is incredibly fortunate. Now, it's something everybody's worked for, but pretty much we haven't made. We probably haven't to struggle and had to struggle for our survival. Things are pretty good. With that privilege, and with that good fortune comes an obligation. It is our obligation to do something to make the world better, even a little piece of the world, even a small part. So my wish for you is to go find your own Sam and take that person to lunch. Or even better yet, let them take you to lunch. It is my greatest privilege and honor to introduce my friend, Mr. Sam Heider.
Students and future doctors, today I'm going to speak to you about my experiences before the Holocaust and during the Holocaust. My name is Sam Heider. I was born in Poland in a small village by the name of Jacob. I was the son of Jewish farmers. We were 6 children, 3 brothers, 3 sisters, my mother, my father. In addition to our family, there were 4 more Jewish families living in this particular village. All farmers, all related to each other. This in itself was very, very rare for Jews to own farmland in Poland. But in our case, this farm was passed on from generation to generation. In a way, we were very fortunate to own this farm. Being a Jew in Poland with farmland wasn't easy, and especially for me. I was the only Jewish boy in school. I would get up 6 o'clock in the morning, around 5 kilometers, so I would be the first one in school, so I wouldn't get beat up by my schoolmates. But on the way home, they would make up for it, believe me. Growing up as a Jewish boy in Poland in a small village, I didn't quite understood the word anti-Semite, or calling me Jew. And when I asked my father why the Polish children call me Jew, so he said, don't think nothing of it. You are Jewish, that's why they call you Jew. However, they called me Jew for anti-Semitic reasons. But in spite of the physical and verbal abuse we endured, Jews in Poland lived a happy and a very traditional Jewish life. Jews lived in Poland for generations. After the Spanish Inquisition of 1492, the Jews were expelled from Spain, and Poland opened the borders for the Jews regardless of the reason. Jews found a safe haven in Poland, and Jews came from different countries to settle in Poland. Jews kept multiplying until the Jewish population reached 3.5 billion. In a country of 35 million Poles, every 10th person in Poland was Jewish. Nowhere in the world would there be 10% being Jewish. Jews in Poland built a tremendous amount of synagogues, and the most famous rabbis and cantors in the world. Jews came from Poland. They all came from Poland. Jews served in the Polish army, including my father, who served in World War I, and my brother in World War II. Even in small towns and villages such as ours, with only 4 Jewish families, we lived a happy and a very traditional Jewish life. As for us, we remained on the farm until 1941. 1941, our farm was taken away from us because we were Jewish, and given it to 2 brothers by the name of Rogalski. And we were sent to the ghetto in a nearby little town named Białobrzeg. So from the beginning we had plenty to eat because we brought some food with us. And we helped a lot of people from starvation. But after a few months, we experienced hunger just like everyone else. We had to live off what we received from the Judenrat, the Jewish community. This was 1 loaf of bread for 8 of us. My mother would divide the bread to 8 pieces, and most of the time she wouldn't leave a piece for herself. Until one day, my younger brother, by the name of Srulek, asked for another piece of bread. My mother said, my child, I don't have any more bread. Can you imagine the pain in a mother's heart when she has to refuse her own child a piece of bread? I could feel the pain in my mother's heart, and I started to cry. My brother was crying, my mother was crying. So I said to myself, tonight I will escape from the ghetto. I cannot see my family going around hungry. I knew if I succeed in my escape, my family would have enough to eat. It was very risky, but I took the chance. That night I went over to my mother and said, Mom, tonight I'm going to escape from the ghetto. I'm going to the Sandomierzes. The Sandomierzes were a good Christian Polish family. Then my mother said, to the Sandomierzes, with all the Gestapo and SS staying there? So I said to my mother, Mom, this might be the least expected place they would think a Jew would hide. The reason is because the Sandomierzes had a restaurant and a store, so the Gestapo and the SS would eat and sleep there. Before the war, my family leased the store from them, and so we were very good friends with them. So that night I went over to my mother and said goodbye. My mother said, my child, be very careful. Then I went over to my father and said goodbye. And my father said, may God be with you. And then I went over to the Sandomierzes. Around 4 o'clock in the morning, I crossed the river and I knocked on the window. Mrs. Sandomias let me in and I said, I would like for you to keep me here. She took me in with open arms and she said, I'll keep you here and protect you with everything I can. And from now on, your name will be Janet. You will be my sister's son, my nephew. So the first morning we were eating breakfast, 2 Gestapo came in, and they noticed me. They looked at me, they looked at each other, and Mrs. Sandomir said, this is my nephew Janet. He'll be with us this summer helping in the fields. So from then on, my name was Janet, a common Polish name. While being by the Sandomierzes, my family had plenty to eat. Their son, by the name of Zizek, would prepare twice a week packages for me to take home. Nobody knew what he was doing except him and me. Zizek was a good friend of mine. We went to school together. This went on for a long time, until one day we were in the fields and it was very hot. And the Sandomierz's daughter by mistake called out my Jewish name, Shmurek, in presence of a Gestapo. She said, Shmurek, przynieś trochę wody, in Polish, which means bring some water. So the Gestapo immediately asked, who is Shmurek? I didn't have any choice but to say, I am Shmurek. He then ordered everybody to the side. He took out a gun and was ready to shoot me. So Mrs. Sandomierz, in the last moment, she jumped in front of me and said to the Gestapo, you'll have to kill me first before you kill him. After ignoring several warnings, not moving, the Gestapo yelled out, he's a Jew. So Mrs. Sandomierz said, he is my son. He finally promised her that he wouldn't kill me. She saved my life by risking her own. In our village, there were 11 Jews hiding by a Polish family by the name of Kurowski. All the relatives of mine, all cousins, they all survived the war. We must not forget those righteous Polish people. They risked their lives by hiding Jews, including myself and a lot of Jewish children. They deserve a lot of praise and recognition. It is unfortunate that there were not more righteous Gentiles who could save a lot more Jews. But from then on, I didn't feel safe with the Gestapo being around. And when my mother found out what happened, she ordered me to come home immediately. So I went back to the ghetto. After being a short time in the ghetto, there was a roundup of Jews to be sent to a concentration camp in Radom, Poland. I was walking with my younger brother when a Jewish policeman, my own cousin, Nusek, grabbed me and put me in a truck to be sent to a concentration camp in Radom. So I asked him, Nusek, why are you sending me to a concentration camp? You are my cousin. And he said, I was your cousin. In some cases, the Jewish police were worse than the Gestapo. So my brother ran home and told my mother what happened. She came running and crying, my kin, my kin, my child, my child. Only God knows if I'll ever see you again. This was August of 1942. I was 17 years old, and after that, I never saw my mother or my whole family ever again. And I was sent to Radom, to an ammunition factory. We were making machine guns for the Germans so they could kill Jews. After being just a few days in Radom, there was an assembly. The SS asked who was 13 years of age. They said they had a special treat for us. 8 boys came forward, and the SS hung all of them. This was the greetings we received in Radom. A few days later, a Jewish policeman called me in a special room with 2 of my friends, and each one of us received 25 whips. We were accused of stealing a piece of bread. 2 weeks later, the same Jewish policeman called me in again and said, "You are not producing enough." He then told an SS officer to give me another 25 whips. After 5 or 6 whips, the Jewish policeman took the whip and he said, "Give it to me. I'll show you how to give lashes." This was after being only 1 month in Radom. Then in late September of 1942, on a Sunday afternoon, a distant relative of mine by the name of Heider came running to me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "Shmulek, we'll never see our families again." The whole ghetto was liquidated, and all, perhaps as many as 8,000 men, women, and children, together with my whole family, were sent to the gas chambers of Treblinka. After receiving the tragic news of my family, I was crying and crying until there were no more tears left in my eyes. So at that point I decided I didn't want to live any longer. Why should I live when there is nobody left from my family? All that's left of my family is a picture of my oldest sister Leah. I am 17 years old and I don't have anybody left in this world. I lost my whole family, 3 sisters, 2 brothers, my mother, my father, and my 1-year-old nephew. Out of a family of 9, I am the only survivor. So at that point, I decided I would escape from the concentration camp, even though I knew I would be caught and the SS would kill me. So one Saturday night, I tried to escape, and a Jewish policeman captured me. The next day, Sunday morning, he started kicking and beating me, and I was bleeding all over. And at the same time, the camp doctor happened to walk by. He asked this policeman what happened. And the Jewish policeman said, "This so-and-so, he tried to escape from the camp, but I captured him and turning him over to the SS." So the doctor asked the policeman where I was from. And he said, "This so-and-so, he is from Białobrzeg." God must have told me I am not from Białobrzeg. I am from the village of J-Shoft. So the doctor said, "From J-Shoft?" And I said, "Yes." So he asked my name. In concentration camps, we didn't have a name. We only had a number. So I said my Hefling number is 424. So the doctor said, "No, what is your real name?" And I said Heider. And the doctor said, "Heider? Oh my God, I know the whole family. What happened to your family?" I told him I lost the whole family. They were sent to the gas chambers of Treblinka. So he begged the policeman, "Please don't turn him over to the SS. Let's take him into the Jewish chief of police." So he took me in and he told them what happened. So then the police chief said, "Punish him in a different way. Don't turn him over to the SS. Give him 25 whips instead." So my body carries 75 whips. He didn't let me go. And I remained in Radom until 1944. In 1944, the Russian army kept advancing in Poland, and the concentration camp in Radom was liquidated, and we were sent to Auschwitz. After marching on a death march for a week, in which many of us died, we were put on a train to Auschwitz. When we arrived in Auschwitz, we couldn't believe our own eyes. We were greeted with a beautiful orchestra and a big sign that said Arbeit macht frei, which means work makes free. After a while, we were given half a loaf of bread. So we said to ourselves, this cannot be Auschwitz, but this was German psychology. They gave us bread in the morning and sent us to the gas chambers in the evening. The same day, we went through a selection facing the angel of death, Josef Mengele, waiting for him to decide whether I should live or be put in the gas chambers. We were standing 5 in a row for a long time and waiting for his decision. He finally came to my row. He looked at me straight in my eyes with my arms up halfway. And he ordered me to raise my arms up a little higher. I would have to drop the only picture of my sister, which I managed to save all those years under my arm. Going through several selections, including Auschwitz, even going into showers, going in one door, coming in another, I still managed to save the picture to this day. As I said, Mengele looked at me straight in my eyes. I kept pinching my cheeks to make myself look healthy. And he ordered me to the right. Had he ordered me to the left, I wouldn't be here today. After the selection in Auschwitz, we were sent to a German Air Force base in Hessenthal. For the first week or so, we ate apples off the trees and begged bread from the German Air Force men. But after a few days, the SS took over the camp. While being in Hessenthal, one winter morning, there was a lot of snow and it was very cold. And I refused to go out for the appel. But the Jewish policeman started beating me and kicking me and said, "You have to go for the appel." I begged him, "Please, let me stay in the barracks. I don't have any shoes." But he refused my begging. So I waited till the last minute, and I ran out barefooted in the snow in front of the Oberscharführer. I kept changing my feet so they wouldn't freeze. So he asked me, "Where are your shoes?" I said, "Herr Oberscharführer, I don't have any shoes. They are torn to pieces." He then ordered the Jewish policeman to give me shoes immediately. I took a chance and it worked. And from then on, I remained in the camp. In Hessenthal, an epidemic broke out and I was struck with a deadly disease, typhus. I think you know what typhus means. Very few survived the typhus. I was among the few who survived. If it wasn't for a distant relative of mine, Abe Flecke, only God knows if I would have survived. Abe Flecke was also stricken with the typhus. And when I begged for a little water, Abe, as sick as he was, he virtually threw himself down from the bunk and gave me some water, even though the doctor said it's not used to give him any water. He cannot live any longer. It's just a matter of minutes. But after he gave me a little water, I started to feel a little bit better. By still being sick with the typhus, the camp was liquidated in 1945 due to the approach of the American Army. The minute we left the camp, the American pilots bombed the train. And I was put on a horse and wagon and after a few days, we were forced to walk again on a death march. Many of us died during the march. I myself could walk any longer because I was still very sick. So I lay down and was waiting to be shot from the SS. Then along came Abe Blackett, and again he saved my life. He picked me up and said, "Hang on to me. I'm not going to let you die here." He dragged me for a while. He then too collapsed. Finally, we were put on a train to Dachau. In Dachau, we didn't work, facing starvation, and we were just waiting to be sent into the gas chambers. While being in Dachau, we witnessed American planes flying overhead on their way to Munich to bomb Munich, Germany. We prayed they would drop some bombs on the camp. We would have rather died from an American bomb than from a German bullet. But our prayers were not answered. They just kept flying to Munich. We could see the smoke and hear the explosions. Because Munich was only 7 kilometers from Dachau. The only reason I survived Dachau was because I was only there for a short time. Although it was only a short time, I experienced the most inhumane conditions. In Dachau, in order to go out to get some water or soup, we had to climb over piles of dead bodies. And we didn't know if the smell was from the soup or from the dead remains of the people. As for myself, from my experience, when I first went to get the soup, and I asked for a piece of potato, which I couldn't find in the soup. So a Jewish cowboy hit me over the head, and I had to drop the soup. Then when I tried to pick up whatever was left on the ground, he smashed it with his shoes. Therefore, many times I didn't even go for the soup. And I didn't care if I lived or I would die. Life was meaningless, and there was no hope of survival. I lived most of the time eating off the piece of bread, what we received each day. There was only 1 pound of bread for 8 of us. After being a short time in Dachau, we were again forced to leave the camp and put on a train in cattle cars, 60 people to a car, with no food, no water, no sanitary facilities. It was standing room only, and the smell from the human waste was almost impossible. Many of us died on the train. After leaving Dachau, no place to go, just going back and forth, and finally being liberated on April 30th, 1945. And now I would like to describe life in the concentration camp. We would get up 6 o'clock in the morning, rain or shine. We would wait for 2 hours until everybody was accounted for. We would then go to work and return to the barracks 6 o'clock in the evening, sometimes later. We went through the same routine every day with no hope for a better tomorrow. We lived like animals. No sanitary facilities, no water, no shower, no shirt, no underwear, just a camp uniform. While being in concentration camps, we lost all our human dignity. If someone was dying, there were 5 or 6 boys waiting for him to die, so they could grab the piece of bread from him. Most of the time there was nothing left, because nothing but shredded pieces, because they were fighting amongst themselves. In one particular camp, this Hessenthal, we didn't have a shower for 3 months. The lice would eat us up alive. I had a shirt, but the more I washed it, the more lice appeared. Even the lice liked to clean. I wore it for 3 years. All that was left was shredded pieces. No one of us would think of survival. We just lived from day to day, or from minute to minute. Our daily living consisted of a piece of bread and soup. When we received a piece of bread and soup, we only hoped to find a piece of potato at the bottom. Most of the time there was nothing but cloudy water. This had to last us 24 hours. When we received our piece of bread, there was always a discussion. Should you eat up the piece of bread and wait 24 hours, or should you save it until morning and hope that nobody would steal from you during the night? In the meantime, Hitler and Himmler were playing for the final solution of the Jewish problem. So they started to build ghettos, concentration camps, crematoriums, where 6 million Jewish people perished because the world kept silent. Also, many other nationalities suffered tremendously, but no one suffered as the Jews. Among the 6 million Jews who perished during the Holocaust, 1.5 million Jewish children cried out from the ashes of Auschwitz, Majdanek, and Treblinka. They asked why. What have we done? We are children, just like any other children. We don't have the right to live because we are Jewish. What did my 7-year-old sister know of being Jewish or not being Jewish? She was so beautiful. She had long blonde hair and blue eyes. The people from the village would admire her. They would ask my mother, where did this beauty came from? You are all dark complexion and she is blonde. Nobody would ever know that she is Jewish. The one who knew that she is Jewish was Hitler, or my 11-year-old brother. He didn't even live to be bar mitzvah. He was so smart, very seldom he would play with children his age. He would rather take a book and go to the lake, sit under a tree and read a book. His dream was to be a scientist. Hitler didn't let my 11-year-old brother to live his dream. For my 13-year-old sister, they were among the 1.5 million Jewish children who perished during the Holocaust. They kept asking why, and sadly, there is no answer. And where was God? We are supposed to be the chosen people. But perhaps even God didn't know the answer. Or perhaps there is no answer. It should be a tragic lesson learned and never to be forgotten. In their names, I am asking you to observe Yom HaShoah, the Day of Remembrance, the door to door, from generation to generation, so that their names shall never be forgotten. Let the 1.5 million Jewish children know that you'll keep up their memories forever. I recently spoke about the grandparents. Most of the Holocaust survivors lost their parents, including myself. Therefore, our children never had grandparents. It is the most painful answer when a child asks, where are my grandparents? Why don't they come to visit us? Where are they? How do you explain to a child that your grandparents will never come to visit you? All that's left of your grandparents are ashes on the crematoriums of Auschwitz, Majdanek, and Treblinka, and others. And as painful as it is, you have to tell your children what happened to their grandparents. And by telling our children and grandchildren, perhaps we can prevent another Holocaust. And now I am asking the German people who witnessed the Kristallnacht of November 9, 1938, the night of the broken glass, in 1938. Hundreds of Jews were killed during the Kristallnacht. They witnessed the destruction of Jewish synagogues, the burning of Jewish prayer books, the destruction of Jewish properties. The German people knew in 1933 that Hitler hated Jews. But as long as they kept killing Jews, the United States and the rest of the world kept silent, including Pope Pius XII, the most influential pope. He should have intervened to Mussolini on behalf of the Jews. Perhaps he could have had some influence on Hitler, but he also chose to be silent. Had they not been silent, perhaps 6 million Jews would not have perished during the Holocaust. After the Kristallnacht, some German Jews escaped Germany. Some of them came to the United States, and some families came to Ohio, like the Appels, the Mays, settled in Dayton. Some Jews from Germany came to our village, and they told us that Hitler is killing Jews for no reason whatsoever, just because they were Jewish. And as we now observe the 73rd year of the liberation of Europe from Nazi Germany, and especially the liberation of the concentration camps, including Dachau, where I was liberated from, on April 30th, 1945. When I look back 73 years ago, I kept asking myself, is this a dream or is it reality? How did I survive 5 years in ghettos, in concentration camps, starving from hunger, barely surviving on a tiny piece of bread and a little bit watery soup, going to an operation without anesthesia on a Sunday, 6 o'clock in the morning, while the SS were still asleep, taping my mouth shut so I couldn't cry or scream. And only God could feel my pain. It was a miracle of miracles that I survived those 5 years. I could have never dreamed that I would be here 73 years later, telling my story to students and future doctors at the Wright State University, students in Dayton, Ohio, in the United States of America. Telling my story to you, ladies and gentlemen. And also, I survived the Holocaust. The images from the piles of dead bodies and the sadistic smiling face of Josef Mengele and other images will remain with me for the rest of my life. And those who deny that the Holocaust ever happened, I only wish it should have been them in Auschwitz and Dachau instead of me. I wonder if they would still deny the Holocaust. While still being on the train on April 30th, 1945, around 9:30 in the morning, we were ordered out of the train. And after a while, we saw a lot of tanks on the nearby highway. And a few tanks turned in our directions. The closer they came, one of us started yelling in Yiddish, "Amerikane, Amerikane, Americans, Americans," the most beautiful sound I ever heard. One soldier came from behind one of the tanks and he said to us in a broken German, "Du habt keine Angst, du bist frei. Don't be afraid, you are free." Those words will remain with me for the rest of my life. Thank you for coming, for sharing with me just a small part of my life during the Holocaust. And thank you all for keeping up the memories of the 6 million Jews who perished during the Holocaust. I want to say a special thank to Brandon Schwartz, Ben Weinblatt for organizing this event, Alex Lang, Sarah Tischerman, I hope I pronounce it right. It would be in Polish, I would, but it's in English. Hannah Holster, right? Isaac Agboda, and Julie McCormick, yeah? For their assistance, mine good friend, Dr. David Schuster, for publicity, and Rabbi Rob Glazer for the culture connection, and the Boonshoft School of Medicine for the venue, right? And as we just celebrated the Festival of Freedom Passover, the liberation from slavery in Egypt, we too were liberated from slavery in Nazi Germany. So we can celebrate the Festival of Freedom Passover in a free country, the United States of America. I'd like to conclude with these words. As long as the gates to Israel are open, the doors to the crematoriums are going to be closed forever. And in the memories of the 6 million Jewish people who perished during the Holocaust, including 1.5 million Jewish children, let us just say these 2 words. Never again. They'll hear our voices and they'll sleep in peace. Thank you. May God bless you. Stand up. Raise up a little bit. You're too short.
I know.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So, I'll stay till midnight. My supervisor told me I can do another 5 minutes or so. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to describe exactly how it all began. On April 23rd, 1945, around 6 o'clock in the morning, the Jewish police and the capo started to chase us out from the barracks, yelling, "Raus, raus!" And we assembled on the railroad station. After receiving a piece of bread and some ersatz coffee, we were pushed in cattle cars, 60 people to a car, with no food, no water, no sanitary facilities, and just waiting to move. And while I was still being on the train, with the doors still open, out of nowhere, American pilots flying over the train, almost touching the roofs, and starting to bump the locomotive, unable to move, and also shooting with machine guns and killing a lot of SS, and also killing the commander of the train. He was assigned to take all of us to the mountains and to dynamite the whole transport train with no survivors. And as we learned later on, but as we always live with miracles, this was a miracle of miracles, that the commander of the train was killed, because the other commander who took over the transport saved our lives by diverting the train in another direction and just going back and forth. And after traveling for 5 days, the smell of the human waste was just unbearable. We finally stopped in a place called Stalta. And while we were on the train, a day before the liberation, I was very skinny. I only weighed 75 pounds. So I managed to squeeze myself from the train, from the railroad car, and I walked into a house nearby, hoping to get a piece of bread. When I walked in, an SS officer was sitting, and he was eating a piece of bread with milk. When I noticed the SS officer, I raised my arms, and I said, "Entschuldigen Sie bitte," excuse myself. And I was ready to leave. So the officer said, "Don't be afraid. Come, sit down." And he told the lady, "Give the boy a piece of bread." And I said again, "Thank you, please let me go." But the SS officer said again, "Don't be afraid, sit down." So I sat down, and I was eating a piece of bread and drinking some hot milk. So I said to myself, am I dreaming? I am sitting with an SS officer by the same table, and as we were sitting, he said to me, "Tomorrow you're going to be liberated. You are going to be free. The Americans are only 7 kilometers from here." So I finished eating, and I got up, and I thanked him again and the lady, and I was ready to leave. So the lady gave me another piece of bread, and she kept looking at me and said, "God, my God, how could they do this to human lives?" And when I was leaving, the SS officer said, "Come with me." And we walked out from the house. And he took out a razor blade. He told me to cut off his SS insignia. And I did so. And I squeezed myself back into the railroad car and told everyone what happened, that we will be liberated tomorrow. No one would believe me. They said he is crazy. He doesn't know what he is talking. You must be dreaming. And they said, "You were sitting with an SS officer at the same table. Are you out of your mind? What are you talking? And he told you tomorrow we're going to be liberated, we're going to be free." No one would believe me. And the conversation was going on almost the whole night. And around 9:30 in the morning of April 30th, 1945, we were liberated. We were free. Thank God. This only took, 5 minutes? Out of all of this, I still managed to say something like a joke, but it's not a joke.
So now if anyone would like to ask any questions of Mr. Heider, now's the perfect opportunity, just for a little bit. I'll ask some questions and get people to start asking. Why do you think that the Jewish police officers were worse to their fellow Jews than were the SS?
You know something you not know? You know why? Because they thought they couldn't be saved. And what happened to the same policeman, my cousin, when the ghetto was liquidated, he was the first one to be shot. They thought that they'll save themselves. They, cooperated with the SS, with the Gestapo. So they didn't care if you were a cousin or a brother, whoever. As long as he pleased the SS. not the family. Like I said, in some cases, they were worse than the Gestapo.
When you came to America for the first time, immigrating, how were you received by people in this country?
Yet, when we came here, firstly, we came from Hamburg, from Bremenhaven, in Germany, on a ship. We traveled for 11 days. We left December 2nd. We arrived in New York, December 13th. It wasn't such a pleasant ride, but it was okay because it was a military ship. So, but it was all right as long as we were on the ship. We know that we are going to the United States, we're going to America, to a free country. We're not going to be persecuted no more. This is how we arrived. And we were greeted here by from New York. They sent us straight to Dayton. We didn't even know what Dayton meant, but before Dayton was D-A-Y-T-O-N. So I asked, where is Dayton? It's not Dayton, it's Dayton, Ohio. I said, what, Ohio? I said, is it in the United States? And we came, they sent us to Dayton, Ohio. We didn't have nobody. We came here without anything, without a penny. But the Jewish community helped us out. As a matter of fact, one of them spoke a little bit Jewish. So they gave us an apartment. He took us to the apartment. And there was a refrigerator. And he took out some food, some meat, and everything else. He gave us enough food. So my wife said, what is he doing? Is he crazy? He's putting food in a coat, it's going to get cold. He said, this is going to last 3 months or 6 months. So she said, let him eat. I'm not going to eat after 6 months. But we didn't have a refrigerator. We didn't know what the refrigerator meant. We had a cellar. We had like a basement. And in the summertime, we had a lake, so we cut off some pieces of ice. And we kept this, whatever we had, we put it in the cellar and it kept cold till about this time of the year. We didn't know anything about it. We didn't speak a word of English. As a matter of fact, when I started to work, and I didn't know, I tried to save a dime. I went by bus, but same year when we came here, the buses were not running because the snow was knee deep. And I said, no, I'm going to walk. So I walked from Broadway I worked for Metropolitan Clothing Company, Leather. And the policeman, and I walked like jaywalking, what do you call it? So he stopped me. He said, you jaywalking? I said, what? I asked him, you speak English or you speak Polish? He said, I speak English. I said, me no understand English. So he let me go back. But the store was closed, and I had to walk back. But I enjoyed every minute of it, believe me, just to be in the United States. The only thing what I missed, because when we were, let's say, in Europe, Poland, they said in America, money grows on trees. So I said, you know something, I'm going to get up 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to look at the trees. And I said, whatever money I find on the trees, don't tell nobody. This is what we used to say, because America was still America. Everybody knew about the United States. And a lot of Jews from Eastern Europe came to the United States in the early 20s. And after a while, I met somebody who came here from Poland. And then it was much easier for me because they spoke Polish, they spoke Russian, they spoke Jewish. beginning to speak a word of English. You even speak like him. Friend, you speak English? I'm a Polish. Nope, not Polish. Not so proud.
Thanks for sharing your story. What was your experience dealing with Holocaust deniers?
Holocaust deniers, have you ever had experience?
Absolutely. You don't have to go far. Take, for example, Iran. They said the Holocaust never existed. There was no Holocaust. Believe it, there's plenty of them who deny the Holocaust. They said it was just a dream. So I tell them, you should have been in the concentration camp instead of me. You wouldn't say there was no Holocaust. How did 6 million Jews perish during the Holocaust? And the problem was that nobody said a word. The whole world kept silent. Nobody spoke out against Hitler and the Nazis. They did whatever they wanted. 80 million people didn't say a word. 80 million Germans. They stood by. And then they denied the Holocaust. Even at the Nuremberg process, they said no, they didn't know anything about it. Bystanders. Anyone else? And I'll come back.
I was just wondering how you and your wife met, or where you
How did you meet?
Oh, that's a good question. When we were liberated, I was sent to a DP camp, a displaced person camp, in UNRWA, by the name of Landsberg am Lech. Maybe you remember Hitler was in the jail in Landsberg. As a matter of fact, after the liberation, the American the MP, we tried to go see where he was in prison. They didn't let us go there. But going back to how I met my wife, when I was liberated, there was no Jewish girls there. Very, very few. So I asked, where can I find a Jewish girl? so one of the boys were liberated. He said, you know, I hear in Bergen-Belsen, there's a lot of Jewish girls. They were liberated by the British. I said, I'm going to go to Bergen-Belsen. So I went to Bergen-Belsen. By the way, I went by train, which was cold. When I got to Bergen-Belsen, so I went to the Jewish family service, and I said, well, can I get a shower? Look how I look like. So I got a shower, and they gave me a shirt, and I said, where can I find some Jewish girls? So they said, Saturday night, there's always a dance, and all the Jewish girls come to the dance. And they said, I'm more than sure you'll find a Jewish girl over there. So I went to the dance there. There was a lot of Jewish girls, because in this particular camp, a lot of Jewish girls worked in this camp, even though it was a concentration camp. So I looked around, I see this, and then I saw my wife. She was standing there, she was 60 years old. She had long hair, they didn't cut off her hair, because most of the girls didn't have no hair. They cut off their hair. She had long hair, but she was also naive, so to speak. She didn't say a word. So I approached her, and I said, first I said in Yiddish, Jewish. Everybody was dancing, so I said, would you like to dance? So I said, I don't speak Jewish, I don't understand Jewish. She came from a big city. The big cities, they were talking more Polish than English. So I said, all right, so I'll ask you in Polish. I asked, would you like to dance in Polish? So she said, I don't know how to dance. And I said, you want to know something? I don't know either. So this I met my wife. It was a 1945. And I asked her at the dance, I asked her, would you like to come with me to this and this camp in Landsberg from there? Because I stayed there, I lived there. I had an apartment. Actually, I was there, so to speak, for the whole barrack. I could do anything I wanted. I said, well, she asked me where I'm going to stay. I said, I'll give you a room to stay. So I took her back to Landsberg, and I gave her a room in 1945. And after a year, I said, would you like to marry me? She said, well, you don't have to ask twice. So we got married in 1946. A very, very traditional wedding. In 1947, our son was born in Germany. Right now, he is in Germany, and he went to the place where he was born. He's in Germany now. And he sent me he got a certificate, and they asked him if he would like to be a dual citizen. He said, no, I am an American citizen, I'm not a German citizen. But he had all the papers when he was born. From Germany, he went to Spain. They went on a tour. I never went back to Germany. I never went back to Poland. I couldn't go. Even though the Polish government, the German government, I still have some letters from them. They want to pay for everything. I said, no, I cannot. So this is how we got married. In 1949, we left Germany. We came to the United States. We came to Dayton.
So what was life like in the displaced persons camp?
What was life like in this place?
Well, first of all, we had plenty to eat. As a matter of fact, we couldn't eat everything. But we came to Landsberg in August of 1945, right after the liberation. When we came to Landsberg, maybe with 100 or so boys from my little place, from the little ghetto. So they came together with me, and being just before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, I said, you know something, this is the first Rosh Hashanah after the liberation. I think we should celebrate. But quite a few of them, quite a few of the boys, they said, what do you want me to do? You want me to go to the synagogue and pray for forgiveness? Some of them didn't believe. They said, no, God should ask us for forgiveness. Because look what God did to us. And I persuaded them. Some of them came, but some of them didn't want it. I told them, do this for your family. I know your family. They'll hear your voice. Don't do it for nobody else. Do it for your family. Come to the service. So the first day, it was just a few of them. But I conducted the services because I knew from by heart. And the next day, quite a few of them came, maybe more than 100. And on Yom Kippur, there wasn't enough seats. They all said that we came to hear your services because you conducted the services just like before the war. I remember because my father, he hired a rabbi for me to study Judaism. This I know. I'll never forget. To this day.
But I was wondering, how do you have such a great memory with everything? Did you write it all down right after the war, or did you just recall events and have people help you with corroborating events?
That's a very good question. You know why? Because I don't remember what happened 3 days ago. But I remember what happened 70, 80 years ago. Sometimes I get aggravated because, it's just happened and I forget. But I thank God, I have a good memory, and I owe this to my father. Yeah. Like I said, I remember everything since I was maybe 5, 6 years old. come to me and ask me what happened yesterday. I said, well, you don't know, I don't know either.
Hopefully you'll remember this.
No, I don't. I get sometimes angry. Why I don't remember? But, you know how old I am. I'm 18.
Sam, could you tell us about how you composed your song and sing it for us, please?
Which one? If you wish.
That would be fine.
Well, I have to tell you how it all happened. From 6 o'clock in the evening till 6 o'clock in the morning, we were not allowed to go out from the barracks. So what we did, like me, I told her, I knew a lot of jokes. My father was in the army, and he came back with so many jokes, and I remembered the jokes. And I kept telling the boys, I'll tell you some jokes, and I'll sing some songs, but don't give up your faith. Don't give up. God will help you. If you get up in the morning, you say, thank you, God. And I persuaded them. And after the war, they all thanked me for it. And I remember some of the songs. So which one should I sing?
Whatever you like.
In Yiddish. Is it okay? This is about the family. I know a lot of Jewish songs. And I know a lot of Polish songs too. But this is in Yiddish. So who speaks Yiddish? Must be me. I'm going to sing this song. This is a song. Well, we didn't have no street, no house, no name, no town or village, nothing. This I made up myself. So, wo ist das Gässerle und wo ist mein Stieg? Wo sind meine Eltern, und das ich stark geliebt? Nicht du mehr das Gässerle, nicht du mehr die Stieg, nicht du mehr Tate Mame, und das ich stark geliebt. Nicht du mehr das Gässerle, nicht du mehr die Stieg, nicht du mehr Tate Mame, und das ich stark geliebt. Der Mann sieht die Kinderjuren, ich bin gewesen ein Kind, mein Mame, mein Teilenkind, gesessen bei mein Weg. Ein sie zu raten, aber sie nicht gekannt, verschickt nach Treblinka und dort sie verbrennt. Ein sie zu raten, aber sie nicht gekannt, verschickt nach Treblinka und dort sie verbrennt. Wo ist das Gässerle und wo ist mein Stieg? Wo sind meine Eltern, und das euch stark geliebt? Nicht du mehr das Gässerle, nicht du mehr daheim, nicht du mehr Tate Mame, für sie käme mehr nicht sehen. Tate Mame means father and mother. I lost them, I will never see them again. I made up quite a few. You want to hear another song?
In English?
Oh?
Tell everybody what it means.
Oh, I had it in English too. Yeah. Do you
Tell
remember
us-
she
tell us in
translated in Germany?
Tell us in English what it means, what that song means.
This is about a little street in a house. We don't have it no more. There is no more little street. There is no more house. There is no more family. I'll never see him again. This it goes on almost the same words. So where is my mother? I loved her so much. She was sitting in a crib. She was sitting by my crib. She used to sing me such beautiful songs to sleep when I was a child. Now they send her to Treblinka. And then there is the song, when a mother brings her child to a Christian family, and she tell the child, from now on, you're not Jewish no more. You shouldn't speak a word of Jewish. You shouldn't sing a Jewish song. You should never say that you are Jewish. You have to play with the kids the same way like they do. If they play whatever they play, you play with them. But don't speak a word of Jewish. The mother took the child in the middle of the night and she left him there and she went home. It's a very sad. You want me to sing the song? Narit Fischer weit in ein Stieb, in ein Seid, durch ein Fenster nicht kein Kreuz, gucken kinderlich heraus, die Ingerlich mit Flachsenkepp, Mäderlich mit blonde Zett, und zusammen dort sei, gucken schwarze Augen zwei. Schwarze Augen viel mit rein, und an Nase ein klein, Lipperlich zum Kuschen Ohr, schöne schwarz gelockte Ohr. Die Mama hat den Du gebracht, eingewickelt spät bei Nacht, geturet ihn, starke Krug, und still hey zu ihm gesucht. Und mein Kind, dass du dein Ort, gedenk dein Mames letzte Wort. Und mein Kind, dass du dein Stieg. Und mein Kind, du bist mehr kein Nie. From now on, you're not the two anymore. Mit den Kindern spiel sie fein, die sollst gehorsam ruhig sein. Kein Niegeschwur, kein Lied, und mein Kind, du bist mehr kein Nie. She tells the child from now on he is not Jewish anymore. He cannot say a Jewish word, he cannot sing the Jewish song. It goes on a little bit more to the child. Catch my breath. But euch gesehen, du siehst das Kind, wenn Hitler gemacht schon mal, wie Krieg, gegossen hat sich jüdisch Blut. Man hat noch gehört auf der Flucht der Jugend. Aber gedenkt, dass die Mames Rei mit den Kindern spielt sich fein. Kein jüdisch Wort, kein jüdisch Lied. Oh lieber Gott, ich bin ein Jid. He remembered the words what his mother told him, but at the end he said, my dear God, I am a Jew. That's it.
What do you want to say? We're going to party.
No, they didn't understood everything, so I have to repeat it. Kidding.
You got me. All right, well, I just want to thank everybody so much for being here, and thank Mr. Heider again so much for sharing his story and keeping his memory alive.
Got me. We were 150 families here in Dayton, Holocaust survivors. 2 of us were left, and a few months ago, one passed away. I am the only survivor.
We will keep your memory alive and cherish it. And then just take with you, these 6 candles for the 6 million Jews, and always remember and never forget. To end, I would like to thank everybody who helped put on this event. I could not do this alone, so would all my team please stand to be honored and recognized. And Dr. Schuster as well for his service and for coming here and speaking on behalf of Sam and bringing the Sam in for Sam.
I want to thank those two ladies. They are nurses at the Dayton Heart Center. And whenever I come, one kisses me in this cheek and I They are very, very special to me. Very special. Thank you for being here.
All right, everybody. Well, have a good evening. See you around soon.
I can eat.
You can eat. If you want potatoes,
Potatoes I had on the farm.
I know.
How are you? Yeah, there's a lot. Oh, wow. Yeah, bye-bye.
well, it's not necessarily urgent to me. They're around for 9 times.
See ya.
How are you?